Hi. This is a quick video about all the different ways, well, maybe not all the different ways. I can think of perhaps 5 different ways that you could experience the yoga pose bakasana, which translates as crow or crane pose. So first of all, I guess the more obvious ways of doing it, which are on your hands. That's the way we normally see this pose experienced. So one version is I'll be on my tiptoes, I've got my feet together, and then I plant my hands, and I'm going to try and get my knees up into my armpits. It'll end up that my shins are kind of balancing on my upper arms. So I'm going to come way up onto my tiptoes and just try and wiggle knees into armpits. Then from here, I'm going to grip my fingertips, lean forwards, and soon there's so much weight on my hands, my feet can hover off the floor. So that way is, some people prefer that if it's easy for them to fold deeply in half. That needs to be a really deep fold to get your knees up to your armpits. Also, you can see how my thigh bones, they're just quite conveniently about the length of my torso. So my knees just fit into my armpits. If you don't have that kind of foldability, or perhaps you have different proportions, you might find that this way around a difficult way to access. So another version, instead of having legs kind of on the backs of arms, is to have them on the outside. So I'm going to start in a little squat on tiptoes. I take my knees apart. I drop my upper body low. So now instead of knees on back at armpits, they're on the outsides of my legs. So I'm going to slide my hands back until my arms are pressing on my legs. I'll squeeze my legs in, grip my fingertips, and then really 3 steps from here. I'm going to come up onto tiptoes. I lift my bum. I lean forwards. And then again, I just need to get enough weight forwards of my hands that my feet are able to come off the floor. If this pose is problematic for your wrist, which it is for a lot of people, and it was for me for a long time, there's a way you can do it balancing on your arms, but you're not on hands, you're on forearms. So for this version, I'm going to start in the way that I just did, but instead of getting hands down on the floor, I'm going to drop super low and bring my elbows down onto the floor. And then I lean forwards, squeeze my knees on upper arms. My nose is going to come way close to the floor, and then I just lift my toes off. So if your forearms come down to the floor, this might feel like an easier way of doing it because you've got a much bigger base on the floor, all of forearms instead of just hands. But if it's difficult for you to get into a low squat or to get your elbows down towards the floor, that way is going to feel impossible. So it's not that either of them is like the easier or the harder way, just different people will find them easier and hard. If you want to work with the hand version, but it's bothering your wrist, you could just think about trying to lift the heel of your hand. So maybe if I folded over the front of my mat a couple of times and had the heel of my hand on the fold and knuckles on the floor, that would give me enough lift to take away that angle of wrist that'd be uncomfortable. You can also do this shape just on your feet. So I'm in a little squat, take my knees wide, dropping my upper body low. With my legs, I'm squeezing in, my arms, I'm pressing out. This is the same pose, but if I was going to go onto my hands, I just have to tip forwards a few degrees. I could also choose to do this pose on my bum. So think like boat pose. I'll lift my feet, but instead of having shins kind of parallel like you would in a normal boat, I keep my big toes together, take my knees apart, arms on the insides. So this is way less work for my arms and shoulders, but it's a ton of work for fronts and hips. It's a really good hip strengthener, maybe belly muscles. You might want to try and walk your knees a bit higher up your arms. And then lastly, if we're thinking about belly muscles, how about making this shape on your back? So big toes together, knees apart, lift head and shoulders, look down towards your feet, reach your arms down, resist the temptation to grab your feet and pull yourself in. Instead, just wiggle your knees up towards your armpits with your arms press out, with your legs squeeze in. So again, that version is much less work for arms, but I feel it working a ton in my belly. So it's not that there is a better or a worse way of doing this shape. It's just that there are different ways to experience it depending on what you're trying to get out of what you're doing that day. So I hope that was useful. If you've got any questions, please just pop me a comment and ask. And thank you very much for watching.